Hello YouTube, Mr. Max here. Today we will be asking the question, what if every Pokemon region had an Ice-type gym leader? Now, in the Ghost video in this series, I actually said that it was the Ghost type that had the least number of Pokemon associated with it. I only realized after I had uploaded that video that I was actually incorrect. It is Ice that has the least number of Pokemon. Ghost is actually third least. It's Ghost, then Fairy at second least, and then Ice with the least. But despite ice being the rarest type, for some reason, there is an ice specialist in nearly every single Pokemon game. In fact, the only Pokemon games that don't have some kind of ice specialist, whether it be a gym leader, Elite Four member, some kind of significant villain character, etc., the only ones that don't have some kind of ice specialist are the Sun and Moon games and Pokemon Sword. That's it. Every other game has some kind of ice specialist. But despite there being so many ice specialists, I do think there are a good number of ice types that could use more recognition in the region they come from. So without further ado, let's get right into the criteria for how I develop these teams. The gym leader team and position will be chosen based on the ice Pokemon native to the region. So I'll be focusing on the ice Pokemon introduced in that region and then making teams largely based off those, and then making a choice as to where in the region this gym is located. Many other creators I've seen make videos like this, they'll say, oh, here are the 4 or 5 best ice types. You put those at the eighth gym and you can work backwards from there. I wanted to make specific choices about where, like what position this gym is. Might make multiple teams, but in those cases, I'll say which one I liked the best. I'll use the version of the region with the most options, Platinum for Sinnoh, Black and White 2 for Unova, etc. I will not be reusing aces of any canon, ice type gym leaders, or Elite Four members unless necessary. Now, this actually got a little bit tricky because there are so few ice types throughout, every single region. There were many times when the ice specialist used, if not the only ice type, one of the only good ice types as their ace. So I did have to get a little creative with some of these teams. Um, but luckily, all other Pokemon from all of major trainers are fair game. So if there is a water trainer that uses ice types, I'm still able to use to use those Pokemon on this team, for example. Um, yeah, again, thankfully, because otherwise I might be shut out of a lot of Pokemon throughout all of these. And the gym leader's overall strength will be based on the canon gym leaders of the region in question, if not slightly stronger. So let's say I wanted the Hoenn ice type gym leader to be at the third gym. I'll make I'll make this one's base stat total similar to that of Watson in Emerald. They're pretty close at least. Although with gyms that are in Gen 5 and 6. I might add an extra Pokemon. I might just make that team a little stronger just to add a little more challenge where I think it's necessary, but that'll come by case basis. All right, so let's jump right into the first team here with Kanto. And Kanto was very tricky because, first of all, I kind of had to wrestle with the fact that in Red and Blue, and then Leaf Green Fire Red, Lorelei, the ice specialist of that region, technically had two aces. Both Jinx and Lapras were both on the same level as her, both being her strongest Pokemon. In the Gen 1 games, it's 56, and Leaf Green Fire Red is 54. But then, luckily, for the purposes of this video, in the Let's Go games, they solidified Lapras as her ace. And I agree with that completely. That just, I've always felt like that just made more sense as her ace. Not that Jinx isn't good, but like, especially with just how good the ice type, how good the psychic type was in Gen 1, I just felt like Lapras just kind of felt more ace material. Actually, it has, I think, almost 80 higher base stats, if not, yeah, like close to 80 higher base stat total. So Lapras just makes way more sense for her anyway. But outside of that little conundrum, um, the only other ice types in that region are all of the ones that are already on her team. There are no ice types that are first stages in that region outside of Lapras and technically Articuno and Jinx. All the other ice types, Cloyster and Dugong, yeah, that's all of them. Their previous evolution were not ice. Both of those, Shelter and Seal, are both uh, are both water types. So it would be a little weird just to have this ice specials be like the fifth or sixth gym and just have Dugong, Cloister, Jinx. I guess that seemed a little lazy to me, but also felt weird to have her team be mostly Pokemon that are not ice types. Like I could have done something like Seal, Shelter, Jinx at like the third gym somewhere around there, but that also felt a little weird. Like, oh, they eventually become ice types, but they're not ice now. So thankfully, once again, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee came through for me because not only did they, take away the conundrum of Lorelei having two aces, they also technically added some new ice types for me to work with. So I think it makes sense for this Kanto gym to be the third gym with Alolan Vulpix, Alolan Sandshrew, and Jinx. I actually have a couple of first stage ice types to work with, and I think Jinx works very well as the ace of a third gym. Um, it it's in a similar tier as something like Magmar and Electabuzz, who I previously have made aces of a third gym in the past. So I think it only makes sense for Jinx to be here. And again, I'm just so grateful that Vulpix and Sandshrew both had Alolan variants that are ice types and are accessible to some, at least some capacity in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And I think it would make perfect sense for a gym leader to have access to like special Pokemon like this. And usually in these videos, I have the little character icon here be the trainer that is best associated with the type. And I decided to go with a little pun here because the icon here, it's not from the Let's Go games, it's actually from Leaf Green Fire Red, where this is the female cool trainer. Get it? Because ice is cold. She's a cool trainer. You get it. Though that'll pop up a couple of times. They're not like directly like a snowboarder or like some kind of character that is specifically seems like they specifically would use ice types. It's either a trainer that has at some point their trainer class has used ice types, or it's a pun kind of like this. So now for Johto, another region that just didn't really have that many ice types to work with, but I at least had enough to make a decent enough team, that being the second gym. I've actually made Sneasel the ace of a second gym before, all the way back in my Dark video, but I think Sneasel just kind of has a good enough base stat total to be, or at least his stats are spread in a certain way where he is strong enough to be an ace of a second gym, but any later would definitely be too weak. Um, Especially in Generation 2, where the two stab types, Dark and Ice, are both special, and Sneasel's special stat is absolutely terrible. But at least if it knew, like Fury Swipes, Fury Cutter, Metal Claw, even Shadow Ball, maybe at that point, it could actually hit pretty hard and really fast with its attack and speed. But outside of Sneasel, we have Swinub and Delibird as well. I have almost considered making this a first gym because honestly, Delibird isn't really gonna do much. Like it might, I guess Icy Wind is in the second gym. The second gym, the only real other like ice HM outside of Hail, but I wanted to actually be a an attacking move. I guess Delibird could use Icy Wind, but even then it's still not very strong. So basically just no Icy Wind and present is not a very good move most of the time. Um, But I think with three Pokemon here, it it works well enough, especially since Delibird and Sneasel, as weak as they potentially could be, they still are pretty fast and could obviously lower your speed even further with Icy Wind. And then Swinub, outside of Smoochum, which I didn't I didn't want to do Smoochum. Outside of Smoochum, Swinub is the only other ice that's available, so there you go. Now for Hoenn. Hoenn is a very funny case because it's one of those instances where even though where they they have a Elite Four member be an ice specialist, despite there only being two lines of ice types throughout the entire region. Not just two new lines, and there's some previous gen Pokemon. No, only two. Only five Pokemon across two lines. Steel Celia Walrein and then Snorunt Glalie. That's it. I don't know why they would make an Elite Four member ice type when there are so few options and there's a good amount of other Pokemon that are, a good amount of other types that could work as Elite Four member, and they went with ice. So yeah, I basically only had those two lines to work with outside of one other one that I am cheating with a little bit, but in order to have a team of more than two Pokemon, I kind of had to use it, and I think I like this team overall. So once again, we have a cool trainer here. Again, I think that's funny. We have Spheal, Snowy Form, Cast Form, the only other ice type possible in this region. They didn't bring back Sneasel. They didn't bring back Cloyster or Dugong, Delibird, even Swinub. Nope, none of those. Snowy Form, Cast Form is the only other ice type possible throughout the entire region. And then Glalie as the ace. Would it be a dramatically under-leveled Glalie? Yes, I'm pretty sure Glalie evolves at 42, which I think is way too high for Glalie. Not that it's bad, but it's not good enough to be that high. Like 38, I might could be okay with, but 42 is way too high. If I'm even right about that, which I think I am. I know Walrein evolves that high. Pretty sure Glalie evolves in the 40s as well. Um, but regardless, at the fourth gym, there's no way for Glalie to be a Glalie yet, but Watson at the third gym historically used both Magneton and Manectric, who are both underleveled. In fact, Flannery in Emerald used an underleveled Camerupt, so I think it's fine. I was kind of going back and forth between if this worked better as the third or fourth gym. Glalie having a base stat total where it's 480, but every stat is even. That kind of made me feel like it's like just tanky enough and also just strong enough to work as a fourth gym ace, but maybe would be a little too strong as a third gym, especially since you just don't have access to a lot of fighting or fire types or even that many rock types yet. So I think as a fourth gym, just to give the player a couple more options to fight it with, I think this works as a fourth gym. Now for Sinnoh, and in classic Sinnoh style, we have enough Pokemon to make sense as the eighth gym. Um, Fun fact, I'm pretty sure every single time you have a chance to fight uh Candace, she has a different ace. Because in Diamond and Pearl, her ace was obviously Abomasnow. And then in Platinum, um it was changed to Frostlass. And then the rematch in those games, it was changed to Glaceon. And then in the rematch of uh the remakes, I'm pretty sure went to Frostlass and Weavile. I think Frostlass and Weavile are both. No, sorry. Weavile is her ace, and then they made Frostlass the ace of the ghost of Fantina for some reason. I'm not sure why, but regardless, I'm only focusing on the first time you would encounter them, no rematches or anything. So Glaceon and Weavile, for that matter, are fair game here. But I'm not including Abomasnow or Frostlass since they were the ace of her actual gym fights. Plus, there was enough ammo to work with where I didn't need to use them. I think it would definitely help this team a lot if you had a snow warning snow setter, but unfortunately, it just yeah, I didn't feel great about using either of them since Glalie is in that Pokedex. But we have Glaceon, Glalie, Weavile, and about Mamoswine as the eighth gym. And Mamoswine just is one of those Pokemon that I'm kind of surprised wasn't really used on any significant trainers. Even Bertha, I feel you probably could have gotten away with getting rid of her either Whiscash or Golem and putting in Mamoswine. I think that would have been very cool. It is on Candace's rematch team, but I still think it would work better in an Elite Four team. But regardless, it works very well as an eighth gym here. But I also made one that is the fourth gym with Snover, Piloswine, and Glaceon. I wanted to make a team that had a snow warning user here, and then Piloswine and Glaceon both having Snow Cloak would make this team overall just kind of annoying to handle. I think the average base stat total is a little weaker than the fourth gym typically is in Sinnoh, but I think just by how annoying those snow cloak things would be, I think I think it'd be I think it's fine. I do think this eighth gym is better overall, but uh I think you could make a team out of fourth gen or for the fourth gem as well. Now for Unova, once again, something about the both Sinnoh and Unova both have just a lot of very good Pokemon that warrant eighth gem spots. So we have Cryogonal, Weavile, Walrein, and Vanillux. And this Vanillux is holding an ice gem because I firmly believe that if Game Freak had started the battle gimmicks one gen earlier, they would have used these type boosting gems on every single gym leader and other significant trainers just to give their types, give the first move of their type just a little more punch. And Vanillux is definitely a very strong user of that since his special attack stat is crazy high. Like even this was like the first region where Pokemon started getting insanely high stats. Like the power creep was really starting to just balloon. So yeah, a blizzard or whatever from this Vanillux is going to hurt a lot. But yeah, luckily the Black and White 2 decks did introduce a couple of other ice types as possibilities. So we have Weavile and then Walrein, since I couldn't use it in the Hoenn gym, I was very happy I could use it here. And then Cryogonal as the only other ice type introduced in Gen 5. But I also made one that is the sixth gem with Vanillish, Dugong, another water ice type I haven't used yet, but I think it fits here, and Cryogonal, again, having that type boosting gem. And for Kalos, I was a little worried at first because I was going into this, I was thinking that Avalugg was the only new ice type introduced in Gen 6, but thankfully there was at least one other with Aurorus. It's not a very good ice type, but it is an ice type at least. It could potentially set up the snow after Mega Abomasnows runs out, or Refrigerate is also incredibly powerful. So yeah, we have a Mega Abomasnow, Frostlass, Lapras, again, since another water ice type I hadn't used yet, so I think it's cool to put it here, and then Aurorus as the ace. Now Alola typically doesn't have gym leaders, so I just kind of made these teams just kind of inferred based on the stats of major trainers throughout these regions, kind of average strength of gyms across other regions, and kind of made a team based on that. And something I kind of like doing with the Alolan teams here is I like taking significant trainers that you meet throughout the region that are specific, uh, that are like type specialists in that way, and actually giving them gym leader positions. I did that with Guzma in the bug video. I did that with Plumera in the poison. I did it with uh, what was his name? The Gladion in the normal video. So yeah, I like doing that a lot. I kind of wish I had considered doing something like that a little sooner, but regardless, uh, this character here, who I am all of a sudden blanking on her name, Sinnia, I think. Yeah. So I think it's Sinnia. Um, she is actually a one of the professor's aides in Kalos, who is for some reason, along with her partner Dexio, in a like some kind of, I guess, research retreat thing in Alola. I never really understood exactly what they were doing here, but regardless, they're here. And you actually fight Dexio, who is a psychic specialist. You actually fight him a second time, but her, in one of the games, you fight once, but then you fight Dexio. You fight him with a full team later in both games. You only fight her the one time. A little weird, but I think it'd be cool to actually give her a full-on gym leader position. So I went with Alolan Ninetales, Alolan Sandslash, Glaceon to reference the one team you did fight her with. She either has a Delibird or a Smoochum, depending on which version of either Sun, Moon, or Ultra Moon. And then Glaceon as her ace at the time, since Dexio had an Espeon, she is Glaceon. And then Crabominable. Crabominable does not fit her in the slightest. I fully admit that. But outside of these regional forms, Crabominable is the only other ice type introduced in the entire region. I don't know why. I don't know why Game Freak just has this aversion to making cool ice types. They literally had to change the type of two other Pokemon and put them into this region just to have a couple of more options. But Crabominable A doesn't even start as an ice type, so I can't even like, level him down to put on an earlier team. And then in Sun and Moon, you can't even use Crabominable until you're almost at the end of the game because you don't have access to that mountain, like any part of that mountain, until you've beaten everything and you're going towards the Elite Four. So my first playthrough of Sun, I just had a Crabrawler on my team the entire time until the very end. So for some reason, even though they have these, three ice types, actually, in fact, Sandslash and Ninetales are version exclusive in that game. But you don't have access to any ice types at all until you're going towards Elite Four. I find that a little weird. I wish Game Freak had put any other ice types somewhere throughout the region. I mean, I think you might have access to like maybe one or two other, like maybe Cloyster, like previous Delibird, I know you do, but as far as new ice types, Crabominable and then these two regional variants are the only ones possible. I find that a little annoying. So even though Crabominable doesn't fit her at all, if I were to give her an eighth gym team, it would have to be Crabominable as the ace. But I actually do like this other team I made for her a little more, this being the third gym, the Alolan Sandshrew, Vanillite, and Alolan Ninetales. Yeah, maybe this could even no, Ninetales a little too strong for an earlier gem. Yeah, I maybe Vanillite could switch out for Sneasel or maybe some other ice type. There actually aren't that many like other lower leveled ice types, especially in Sun and Moon. So yeah, this is about as good as you can get. Maybe up it to like fourth or fifth and make it be a Vanillish, maybe. But yeah, I actually I first of all I like Alola Ninetales for her a lot more than Carbonal as an ace anyway. So yeah, I think I do kind of prefer this for her. Yeah. Now for Galar. Now Galar, for some reason, the only Gigantamax ice type possible was Gigantamax Lapras. There were no new Galarian Pokemon that were given Gigantamax forms. There were no other previous gen Pokemon that were given Gigantamax forms. I'm not sure why, but the the ice gym leader used the only ice Gigantamax form. So, like in previous videos, I will kind of be fudging that a little bit and creating my own Gigantamax forms. So first, we have one that is the eighth gem with Galarian Darmanitan. I could go either way about if it's its Guerrilla Tactics or its Zen mode form. I really like Zen mode Darmanitan, but Guerrilla Tactics is also very, very strong. It could even be one of those things where they essentially kind of like in the Diamond and Pearl remakes where certain trainers have like um I know Rourke had a Relicanth with a Choice Scarf Rockhead and it only knows Head Smash. Same with Gardenia with a Sunflora that only has Solar Beam and Choice Specs, I think. So since Galarian Darmanitan would be locked into only one move regardless, it'd be fun if it had to only the only move it knew was like Ice Punch or Icicle Crash or something. That could be fun. But uh Zen mode Galarian Darmanitan is also, I think, even more fun, if for no other reason than just to add that extra type variety to the team. And then Arctozolt and Arctovish, and then Mr. Rhyme as the ace. And I think he should also have a Gigantamax form. I don't feel as strongly about Mr. Rhyme having of Gmax form as I do the team that's coming up, but I don't know. He just is in my head. I can just kind of envision a kind of pretty neat Gmax form to kind of, you know, focusing in on that, like, Charlie Chaplin, like, old timey black and white sepia tone. Like, I don't know. I think there's something you can do with that in a Gigantamax form. But the other team I made is a third gem with Cloyster, again, another water ice type I haven't used yet, Mr. Mime, the Galarian Mr. Mime, and then Frostmoth. I firmly believe that Frostmoth is criminal that it didn't have a Gigantamax form. In my head, I have always kind of associated Frostmoth and Centiskorch as like kind of counterparts. Clearly, they're not, since Centiskorch is significantly stronger. Frostmoth, I believe, has 475 base stat total, and Centiskorch has 515, which is crazy for something that evolved that early. I think it's like 27 or 24, somewhere in the like mid 20s for Centiskorch. And then Frostmoth, you don't even have access to until much later in the game. Then it's a friendship evolution. But I just feel like it would have made so much sense for the ice for the Melanie, since she literally is dressed like a Frostmoth, for her to have a Frostmoth in that Gigantamax. I don't know. I know that Frostmoth has a hidden ability, Ice Scales, that gives it essentially extra special defense, and it can set up with Quiver Dance, so it doesn't like need that extra base stat total. But there's just something about Frostmoth that just feels ripe for a Gmax form. And honestly, I'm not really like super married to either of these teams. I think something kind of like in the middle between these would like be most ideal. Maybe Mr. Rhyme, Arctozolt, Arctovish, and Gmax Frostmoth. Or maybe like a sixth or seventh gym with Galarian Mr. Mime, Arctozolt, Arctovish, Frostmoth. I'm not really sure. I just definitely feel like Frostmoth with a Gmax form deserves to be the ace of an ice gym in Galar. Now for Paldea, for every team in Paldea, I create at least three teams to represent the three different ways that terrestrialization can be used. One, it's a Pokemon that is of their type that tears into their type to make their moves even stronger. One was Pokemon of their type that tears into a different type to help either defensively or offensively against Pokemon that the type usually struggles against. And lastly, a Pokemon not of their type that tears into their type to represent some kind of theme, like Sudowoodo, where it should have been a grass type, or some kind of strategy, like with Miss Magius, where it tears into an electric type and functionally has no weaknesses anymore. So the first team is a seventh gem with Abomasnow, Frostmoth, Arctibax, and Titan. I really like Abomasnow here since this is the first gen where the hail was changed to the snow weather status that were boost everyone's defense, which is why I also like Frostmoth, where this Frostmoth would definitely have its ice scales ability, which would boost its special defense, but also in the snow, its defense would also be higher. So I just think that synergizes very well. Arctibax, I always feel a little weird about giving a gym leader a final evolved form pseudo legendary, but I think Arctibax works well enough on a seventh gem. And then Cetitan being the ace that tears into an ice type to make its ice type moves even stronger. With its sheer force ability, it can launch off pretty powerful. I think Ice Spinner, um, I'm pretty sure Ice Spinner works with sheer force, but I know Icicle Crash does. So it can, like liquidation. There's a bunch of different moves it can use that Iron Head, I think. Yeah, a lot of different moves they can use that can benefit from that sheer force, but especially those ice moves while it's Terran will just be absolutely devastating. And even if it had its thick fat ability, especially in the snow where its defense is boosted, it could be pretty hard to take out. Next, we have one that is the first gem. I went with Cubchoo, Snorunt, and Citadel, who tears into a water type. Now, ideally, this would be a slightly later team, and this would be a Cetitan that tears into a water type. First of all, just because, I mean, they look like whales. Like you could argue it's a little weird that they're not part water anyway, but I'm very fine with there never being another water water ice for the next several generations. There's probably gonna be, but we've had a good number of water ice types already, so we don't need more. But in this instance, you know, looking at it visually, it you know, people I could see people getting confused about what type it is. So yeah, on top of that, if it were a Titan, it could definitely use stuff like liquidation with that boosted water Terra. I wouldn't feel good about giving liquidation on a first gem, but it can learn stuff like chilling water and water pulse. It will be using its weaker special attack, but I still think that that could catch people off guard if you're trying to hit it with a rock or a fire move that tears into a water type, uses water pulse on you. Yeah, I think that works pretty well. And then lastly, we have one that's the eighth gym with Cryogonal, Avalugg, Cetitan, and an Ace Hariyama that tears into the ice type. First, I really like the core here of Cryogonal and Avalugg. Cryogonal is incredibly especially bulky, and Avalugg is incredibly defensively bulky. Cetitan is just bulky overall, and Hariyama is also just incredibly bulky with its high special, sorry, high HP and serviceable defenses. And if the snow is still up, those defenses can boost even more. So yeah, I like just how bulky this team is. Ice is one of those types that has a lot of weaknesses, yet almost every ice type seems to be super bulky. But if that's the archetype that the type is given, I might as well make the best use of it. And I chose Hariyama here because it has the ability Thick Fat, which would essentially make it where one of its weaknesses, fire, is basically not a weakness anymore. So, you try to hit with fire move and it won't do as much damage as you're hoping. Then if you try to hit it with or use rock or steel Pokemon, it is still, its base form is still a fighting type, so it can still hit those Pokemon with super effective damage. It would be very slow, so a strong enough special ice or strong enough special rock or steel move would still probably maybe not one shot, but do at least do a lot of damage. But if it does something like reversal or just with close combat, like there's a lot of stuff this Hariyama can do in retaliation, since you're probably not going to one shot it. I kind of wish Hariyama could learn ice moves outside of Ice Punch to make use of that Terra Ice, but Ice Punch is still good enough. And maybe in this version of the game, the Ice TM this person gives is something that can be a little more universal. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me down below all of your thoughts about any of these teams. Are there any ice types I forgot about? Any Pokemon that I made aces you don't agree with, or Pokemon that are just on the team that you think do deserve to be the ace? Um, yeah, please let me know all your thoughts down below about all of that. I only have one more video in this series. I've had a lot of fun with it so far, and I've been theory crafting this next video since I started this entire series. So yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing out this series and moving on to, just a bunch of ideas I have for the future. So yeah, with all that, I will see you all next time.